Welcome to Slumbertainment. Get comfortable, close your eyes, and let yourself relax. Tonight's story is The Lamplighter. Please like and subscribe for more restful content. Now, let's begin. The cold came early that winter, settling into the streets before the first snow had even thought to fall. The lamplighter felt it through the worn leather of their gloves as they lifted the brass key from its place on the hook by the door. The weight of it was familiar, comfortable in a way that required no thought. Outside, the sky had already begun its slow surrender to evening, the blue draining away towards something darker, something that would need answering. The first lamp stood at the corner where the main road split toward the market square and the church. Its glass was clean, recently wiped, and the lamplighter paused there as always, feeling for the small door at the base of the lamppost, working the key into the lock with practiced ease. The mechanism turned, the wick caught. Light bloomed upward into the glass chamber, yellow and steady, pushing back against the gathering dusk. For a moment the lamplighter stood watching it, seeing how the flame settled into itself, how it found its rhythm. Then on. The route never changed. 23 lamps in all, spaced along the streets in an order that had been decided long before the lamplighter had taken up the work. Some stood at corners, some in the middle of long stretches where the houses grew sparse and the road continued out toward the fields. Each one required the same attention, the same small sequence of movements. Key, lock, flame, close. The lamplighter moved between them with the ease of someone who had walked the same path so many times that the body remembered it without consultation. The air had a sharpness to it that spoke of deeper cold to come. Breath formed clouds that dispersed slowly. The lamplighter's boots struck the cobblestones with a steady rhythm, the sound bouncing off the walls of the buildings that lined the narrower streets. Occasionally a door opened somewhere, releasing warmth and the smell of cooking, then closed again. A woman passed carrying a basket, nodding without stopping. 2 children ran by, their voices bright and quick, fading as they turned a corner. The lamplighter acknowledged these encounters with a slight movement of the head, nothing more, and continued on. By the 5th lamp, the sky had deepened to indigo. The rooftops stood sharp against it, chimneys sending up thin lines of smoke that rose straight in the still air. The cold made everything clearer somehow, each edge and angle more defined. The lamplighter noticed this without naming it, simply taking it in as part of the evening's texture. The sound of a horse somewhere in the distance, the creak of a sign swinging gently on its iron bracket, the faint smell of coal smoke mixing with the cleaner scent of the winter air itself. The 9th lamp stood outside the bakery, and there the lamplighter paused longer than usual. The window still glowed from within, though the shop had closed. Inside, the baker was moving about, tidying, preparing for the next morning's work. The lamplighter could see the silhouette against the warm interior light, the motions slow and methodical. There was something reassuring in it, in seeing another person engaged in their own evening routine, their own necessary tasks. The lamp came to life, adding its light to the scene, and the lamplighter moved on. Farther along, where the street began to climb slightly toward the older part of town, the houses grew taller and closer together. Here the light had nearly gone, and the lamps became more essential. Each one, once lit, created a small island of visibility, a marker in the darkness. The lamplighter moved from island to island, trailing the light behind, leaving the street transformed. It was work that showed itself immediately, that left evidence of having been done. There was satisfaction in that, though the lamplighter rarely considered it directly. It was simply the nature of the task. At the 15th lamp, a cat appeared. Not a house cat, but something leaner, more cautious. It sat at the base of the post, watching as the lamplighter approached, its eyes reflecting the light from the lamp across the street. The lamplighter worked without hurrying, letting the animal observe. When the new flame sprang up, the cat stood, stretched, and walked away without sound, disappearing into the narrow space between two buildings. The lamplighter watched it go, then continued on. The cold had deepened. The lamplighter's fingers were stiff inside the gloves, the leather less supple in the chill. Each lock required a moment more of attention, each key turn slightly less smooth, but the routine carried its own momentum. The body knew what to do, and the mind could rest in that knowledge, drifting alongside the work without effort or strain. The evening had its own pace, its own gentle insistence. The final lamp stood along the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open ground. Here the darkness was more complete, the countryside beyond vast and unlit. The lamplighter worked steadily through the last few, feeling the familiar sense of completion that came with each one. 21, 22, 23. The last flame caught and held, and the lamplighter stepped back, surveying the street as it stretched away into the heart of town, every lamp burning, every pool of light in its place. The walk back took no particular route. The work was finished, and the lamplighter moved through the lit streets with the ease of someone released from duty. The town looked different now, transformed by its own illumination. Windows glowed, doors opened and closed, voices carried in the cold air. The lamplighter passed through it all quietly, hands in pockets, breath clouding steadily, heading toward warmth and rest, and the certain knowledge that tomorrow evening the lamps would need lighting again. The second evening brought wind. It came from the north, steady and cold, carrying with it the promise of weather yet to arrive. The lamplighter felt it immediately upon stepping outside, the way it found every gap in clothing, every unsealed edge. The sky was clear still, pale and enormous, but the wind spoke of change coming, of the season deepening into itself. The brass key felt colder than usual, the metal drinking in the chill and holding it. The first lamp required more care than the evening before. The wind tugged at the small door as the lamplighter worked to open it, and when the match was struck, the flame wavered and bent before finding purchase on the wick. The lamplighter cupped a hand around it instinctively, shielding it until the flame grew strong enough to resist the gusts. Once the glass door was closed, the light settled and held, protected now, burning steady, despite the wind that rushed past outside. The lamplighter watched it for a moment longer than necessary, making certain, then moved on. Walking was different tonight. The wind pushed from behind along some streets, making progress easy, almost too easy, then switched as the route turned and became something to lean into, to work against. Loose papers skittered along the cobblestones. A shutter banged somewhere, then banged again, irregular and insistent. The lamplighter noted these things without concern, simply adjusting to the conditions, moving with the same steady determination that carried the work forward regardless of weather. At the third lamp, the wind caught the lamplighter's coat, lifting it away from the body, and for a moment the cold penetrated completely. The lamplighter pulled the coat closer, fastening a button that had been left undone, and continued with the lighting. The flame took more coaxing here, the wind finding ways around the glass, even when the door was barely open, but eventually it caught, and the lamplighter secured it and moved on, the route pulling them deeper into town where the buildings offered some shelter. The narrower streets were quieter, the wind reduced to something that moaned softly around corners and through alleyways rather than pushing with full force. Here the lamplighter could work with less interference, moving through the familiar sequence with greater ease. The fourth lamp, the fifth, the sixth, each one adding its light to the street, each one a small victory over the growing dark. The sky above had begun to take on the particular clarity that came with cold wind, the first stars appearing sharp and bright, no haze to soften them. A man passed going the opposite direction, head down, hat pulled low, moving quickly. The lamplighter stepped aside to let him pass, received a brief nod, then continued on. The town was emptying as it always did at this hour, people retreating indoors, seeking warmth and shelter and the comfort of walls against the evening. Only those with necessary business remained outside, and the lamplighter was one of them, moving through the emptying streets with purpose. By the ninth lamp, the one outside the bakery, the light had nearly gone. The window of the shop was dark tonight, the baker long since finished and gone home. The lamplighter lit the street lamp and paused there briefly, looking at the darkened window, at the space where the previous evening there had been movement and light. It was simply different, neither better nor worse, and the lamplighter accepted it without sentiment and moved on. The wind picked up again as the route climbed toward the older part of town. Here it funneled between the taller buildings, creating currents and eddies that made each lamp require attention. The lamplighter worked carefully, patiently, not rushing despite the cold that had begun to settle deep into hands and feet. Each flame had to be properly established before moving to the next. That was the work. That was what the evening required. At the 14th lamp, the cat appeared again. It was sitting in a doorway, pressed back against the wood, sheltered from the worst of the wind. The lamplighter saw it watching, the same lean shape as the night before, the same cautious intelligence in its gaze. The lamp was lit without incident, and when the lamplighter stepped back, the cat stood and moved out from the doorway, walking several paces along the street before stopping and looking back. The lamplighter regarded it for a moment, then continued on the established route. The cat remained where it was, a dark shape against the cobblestones, until the lamplighter turned the corner and lost sight of it. The wind carried sounds from all over town. A dog barking, the distant rumble of cartwheels, voices, indistinct and fragmentary, torn apart before they could form complete words. The lamplighter moved through this soundscape steadily, aware of it all but focused on the work, on the next lamp, and the next, on the progression that would eventually lead to completion. The 17th lamp stood at a crossing where 4 streets met, and here the wind came from multiple directions at once, confused and swirling. The lamplighter took longer with this one, waiting for a moment of relative calm before opening the small door, then working quickly once the opportunity came. The flame caught and held. The door closed. The light spilled outward, illuminating the crossing in all 4 directions. The lamplighter stood in that light briefly, gathering strength for the remaining lamps, feeling the wind pull at coat and hat and scarf, feeling the cold complete and absolute. The final stretch led out toward the edge of town, where the buildings thinned and the countryside began. Here the wind was strongest, unrestricted by walls or rooftops, coming straight across the open fields with nothing to slow it. The lamplighter worked through the last 6 lamps with determined focus, no longer noticing the individual sensations of cold or wind, simply performing the necessary actions in their proper sequence. Each lamplit was 1 fewer remaining. Each flame was a marker of progress. The 23rd lamp stood alone at the farthest point, the last outpost of light before the darkness of the fields took over completely. The lamplighter gave it the same attention as all the others, ensuring the flame was strong and steady, that the glass was properly closed, that everything was secure against the wind, then stepped back and looked along the route, back toward the centre of town, seeing the lights stretching away in a broken line, each one holding against the dark and the wind and the cold. The walk back was harder tonight, the wind less kind now that the work was done, now that there was no task to focus on, no sequence of actions to perform. The lamplighter walked steadily regardless, hands thrust deep in pockets, head bowed slightly against the gusts, following the lit streets home. The wind would blow all night likely, and into tomorrow, but the lamps would burn through it, protected by their glass, keeping their small circles of light intact until morning came. The wind had passed. The third evening opened still and heavy, the air holding a dampness that suggested snow might come soon, though none had fallen yet. The sky was layered with clouds, thick and textured, catching the last of the daylight and turning it into something soft and diffuse. The lamplighter stepped out into this quieter world and felt the difference immediately. No push, no resistance, just the steady cold and the weight of the sky pressing down. The first lamp came to life without incident, the flame taking hold easily in the calm air. The light seemed brighter somehow against the overcast evening, more necessary. The lamplighter moved on, boots striking the cobblestones with a clear rhythm that carried in the stillness. The town felt hushed, waiting. Smoke rose from chimneys in straight columns, undisturbed, climbing until it met the low clouds and dispersed into them. Along the main street, a few people were still about their business. A woman swept the steps of her house, working methodically, the sound of the broom against stone deliberate and steady. Two men stood talking outside the public house, their conversation low and unhurried. The lamplighter passed them without interruption, lit the lamp that stood nearby, and continued on. The men barely glanced up, absorbed in their exchange, and the lamplighter appreciated the lack of acknowledgement, the freedom to work unnoticed. The fourth lamp stood near the fountain in the small square, and here the lamplighter paused after lighting it, looking at the water that trickled from the spout even in this cold. The fountain rarely froze completely, some quality of the flow keeping it moving even when ice formed at the edges. Tonight it ran clear and steady, the sound of it gentle in the quiet evening. A pigeon sat on the fountain's rim, unmoving, its feathers fluffed against the cold. The lamplighter watched it briefly, then moved on, leaving the bird to its stillness. The route turned into a street lined with shops, all closed now, their windows dark. The lamplighter moved from post to post, bringing light to each section of the street in turn. The sixth lamp, the seventh, the eighth. Each one required the same care, the same attention, and the lamplighter gave it without thought, the movements automatic now, refined by countless repetitions. There was a kind of meditation in it, in the sameness, in the knowing exactly what came next. At the ninth lamp, outside the bakery, the window showed light again. The lamplighter could see the baker's wife inside, wiping down the counter, moving with the same methodical care her husband had shown 2 evenings before. The lamplighter lit the street lamp and glanced up to see her notice the new light, see her pause and look toward the window, directly at where the lamplighter stood. She raised a hand in greeting, and the lamplighter returned the gesture, a simple acknowledgement between two people engaged in their evening tasks. Then she returned to her work, and the lamplighter moved on. The dampness in the air had grown more pronounced. It settled on the lamplighter's coat, on the exposed parts of face, on the brass key itself. Not rain, not yet, but the promise of it, the precursor. The lamplighter continued steadily upward through the climbing streets, aware of the moisture gathering but undeterred by it. Weather was simply weather, something to be noted and accommodated, nothing more. The cat was waiting at the 12th lamp, not sitting this time but standing in the middle of the street, watching the lamplighter approach. When the lamplighter reached the post, the cat moved closer, circling once, then sitting just at the edge of the light from the previous lamp. The lamplighter worked without speaking, without trying to engage the animal in any way, and when the new flame was burning and the lamp secured, the cat stood and began walking alongside, keeping pace as the lamplighter moved toward the 13th lamp. They continued this way for 3 more lamps, the cat maintaining its distance but staying close, following the route without hesitation. At the 16th lamp, it stopped and sat again, and when the lamplighter moved on, the cat remained behind. The lamplighter glanced back once and saw it still sitting there, a small dark shape in the pool of lamplight, then turned a corner and lost sight of it. The evening had deepened into true night now, the clouds low enough that they seemed to press the darkness down into the streets. The lamplighter moved through the older part of town where the buildings leaned close, and the alleys between them were narrow and deep. Here the lamps were essential, the only source of light, and each one transformed the space around it completely. Without them, these streets would be nearly impassable after dark. With them, they became navigable, functional, part of the living town. At the 18th lamp, the lamplighter's hands fumbled slightly with the key. The cold had stiffened the fingers despite the gloves, and the dampness had made everything slightly slick. The key slipped once, then caught, and the lamplighter worked more carefully, more deliberately, ensuring each movement was controlled and certain. The flame caught. The lamp glowed to life. The lamplighter flexed the fingers, trying to restore some warmth and flexibility, then continued on. The remaining lamps passed in steady succession. 19 at the corner where the doctor lived, his house showing light in the upstairs window. 20 by the church, where the sound of someone practicing the organ came faintly through the heavy doors. 21 at the edge of the square, where the market was held, the space empty now, swept clean, waiting for morning. 22 along the road that led out of town, the houses here more scattered, the spaces between them darker. The 23rd lamp stood at its usual place, marking the boundary between town and country. The lamplighter lit it with the same care given to all the others, made certain it was secure, then stood for a moment looking out into the darkness beyond. The fields were invisible, dissolved into the low clouds and the night, but the lamplighter knew they were there, stretching away toward distant farms and woods. The lamp burned steadily at this threshold, neither particularly welcoming nor forbidding, simply marking the edge, doing its work. The walk back was quiet and uneventful. The dampness had increased slightly, the air now distinctly wet though still not quite rain. The lamplighter moved through the lit streets, seeing them completed, seeing the work done for another evening. A few windows still glowed. A door opened and closed somewhere. The town settled into its night rhythms, and the lamplighter settled too, heading home through the transformed streets. Through the light that would burn until morning, brought a different kind of illumination and made these lamps unnecessary for another day. The sleet came with the 4th evening, arriving just as the lamplighter stepped outside. It fell in hard pellets that struck the cobblestones and bounced, that rattled against windows and clattered on rooftops. The sound of it was sharp and insistent, filling the air with a noise that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The lamplighter pulled the collar of the coat higher, adjusted the hat more firmly, and set out into it. The first lamp was difficult. The sleet came at an angle, driven by a wind that had returned with the weather, and it stung the exposed skin of the lamplighter's face. The key was slippery, the lock resistant. When the small door finally opened, sleet blew inside, and the lamplighter had to shield the match with both hands, turning away from the wind to strike it. The flame wavered, nearly died, then caught hold of the wick and grew. The lamplighter worked quickly to close the door, to trap the flame inside before the sleet could extinguish it. The light held. The first lamp was lit. The route felt longer tonight. Each step required more effort, each lamp more concentration. The sleet found every opening, worked its way past the coat collar, soaked through the gloves until the lamplighter's hands were wet and cold and increasingly clumsy. The second lamp took 3 matches before the flame would take. The third required the lamplighter to stand with back to the wind, creating a shelter with the body itself. The work continued because it had to, because the lamps needed lighting regardless of weather, regardless of comfort or ease. The streets were empty. No one ventured out who did not have to, and the lamplighter moved through a town that seemed abandoned, that existed only as shuttered windows and closed doors, and the sound of sleet striking every surface. The cobblestones grew slick with a thin layer of ice forming beneath the continuing fall. The lamplighter walked carefully, testing each step, avoiding the places where water pooled and froze. At the 7th lamp, the lamplighter paused in the small shelter of a doorway, just for a moment, to wipe the sleet from face and eyes, to try to restore some feeling to hands that had gone numb inside the soaked gloves. The doorway offered limited protection, but even that small respite was welcome. The lamplighter stood there breathing, watching the sleet fall through the light of the lamp just lit, seeing how it caught the glow and glittered briefly before striking the ground, then back out into it, continuing on. The 9th lamp, outside the bakery, showed no light in the window tonight. The shop was dark, the street deserted, and the lamplighter worked alone in the wind and sleet, fighting to keep the flame alive long enough to establish itself. When it finally took, and the door was closed, the lamplighter stood for a moment with hands pressed against the post, trying to draw some small warmth from the metal, though there was none to be had. Everything was cold, everything was wet. The work was less than halfway done. The climb up through the older streets was treacherous. The sleet had accumulated in patches, creating invisible hazards. The lamplighter slipped once, caught against a wall, steadied and continued more slowly. The wind funneled between the buildings with renewed force, and twice the flame was blown out after being lit, requiring the lamplighter to start again, to use more matches, to stand longer in the weather. The 11th lamp, the 12th, the 13th, each one a small battle, each one won only through persistence and care. The cat did not appear. The lamplighter looked for it at the places where it had been before, but the streets were empty of everything except sleet and wind and the growing darkness. No animals were abroad tonight. Nothing moved that did not have to move. The lamplighter continued alone, simply working through the route, focusing on each lamp individually, not thinking ahead to how many remained. The 15th lamp stood at an exposed corner, and here the wind was strongest, the sleet most relentless. The lamplighter's hands shook as they worked the key, struggled to strike the match. The first match broke. The second was too wet. The third caught but guttered immediately. The lamplighter turned completely around, hunched over, created the smallest possible opening for the wind to exploit, and tried again. The fourth match held. The flame transferred to the wick. The door closed and latched. The The lamplighter straightened slowly, feeling the sleet strike with renewed force, feeling the cold that had penetrated completely through all layers of clothing. The remaining lamps blurred together into a single continuous effort. Each one required the same struggle, the same determination. The lamplighter moved from post to post like something mechanical, no longer fully present, simply executing the necessary actions because that was what the work demanded. The cold had moved beyond discomfort into something else, something that made thinking difficult, that narrowed the world down to the immediate task and nothing more. At the 20th lamp, the lamplighter's hands refused to work properly. The key dropped, struck the cobblestones, and the lamplighter had to crouch down, searching for it in the poor light, fingers clumsy and unresponsive. It had fallen into a crack between stones, and retrieving it required patience that felt impossible to summon. But eventually the key was recovered, the lamp was lit, and the work continued. The final 3 lamps stretched out toward the edge of town, where the sleet came across the open fields with nothing to stop it. The lamplighter moved through this last stretch with head down, seeing only the cobblestones immediately ahead, counting steps between lampposts. 21. Then the long walk to 22. Then the longest walk of all to 23, standing alone at the boundary. The last lamp took the longest. The lamplighter's hands barely functioned now, the matches were nearly exhausted, and the wind seemed determined to prevent this final light from catching. But eventually, through some combination of persistence and chance, the flame took hold and stayed, and the lamplighter secured it and stood back, the work completed. The walk back should have felt triumphant, or at least satisfying, but the lamplighter felt only cold and exhaustion. The lit lamps stretched away through the sleet, their light diffused and strange in the falling ice, and the lamplighter moved toward them and past them, heading for warmth and dryness and rest. The sleet continued falling, and would likely fall through the night, but the lamps were lit, every one of them, burning steady despite the weather, doing their work as the lamplighter had done, pushing back against the dark regardless of what the evening brought. The 5th evening arrived clear and bitterly cold. The sleet had passed, leaving behind ice that glittered on every surface, turning the town into something crystalline and sharp. The lamplighter stepped carefully from the doorway, testing each footfall, aware of the treachery hidden beneath the beauty. The sky stretched overhead in shades of violet and deep blue, perfectly cloudless, and the cold that came with such clarity was profound and absolute. The first lamp stood coated in a thin layer of ice, the glass foggy with frost. The lamplighter worked the key into the lock with difficulty, the mechanism stiff from the cold. When the small door finally opened, the hinges protested, and ice fell away in small fragments that tinkled against the cobblestones. The match struck and caught, the flame seeming almost fragile in the extreme cold, but it found the wick and held. The lamplighter closed the door and moved on, leaving footprints in the thin layer of ice that had formed over everything. The town looked different tonight, transformed by the freeze. Icicles hung from gutters and eaves, catching the last of the daylight and throwing it back in fractured colours. The fountain in the square had frozen solid, the water stopped mid-flow, turned to sculpture. The lamplighter noticed these changes while moving through the route, taking them in as evidence of the season's deepening, of winter establishing itself more firmly with each passing day. At the 3rd lamp, a man passed walking his dog, both of them moving carefully on the ice. The dog's claws scraped and clicked against the frozen cobblestones, seeking purchase. The man nodded to the lamplighter, his breath forming great clouds in the frigid air. They said nothing, both conserving warmth, and the lamplighter watched them continue down the street, the dog pulling slightly at its lead, eager despite the cold. The lamplighter's hands ached with the cold despite the gloves. Each time the gloves came off to strike a match, the exposed skin burned with it, and putting them back on provided only minimal relief. The lamplighter learned to work faster, to minimize the exposure, to have the match ready before removing the gloves. Small adaptations, slight changes to the routine that made the work bearable, if not comfortable. By the 8th lamp, full darkness had arrived. The clear sky meant the light drained away quickly, without the lingering that came with clouds. Stars appeared in vast numbers, brilliant and cold and distant. The lamplighter looked up while lighting the 9th lamp and saw them scattered across the dome of heaven, more than could ever be counted, each one sharp and unwavering in the frozen air. The town's lamps seemed small beneath them, modest and earthbound, but no less necessary for their lack of grandeur. The bakery window was dark again, and the lamplighter wondered briefly about the pattern, about what determined when the baker or his wife stayed late and when they did not. But it was idle curiosity, nothing that required answering, and the lamplighter let it drift away while moving on to the 10th lamp, the 11th, working steadily through the climbing streets where the ice made every step deliberate. At the 14th lamp, the cat appeared. It emerged from an alley, moving carefully on the ice, its paws tentative and testing. When it reached the lamplighter, it stopped and sat, looking up with eyes that reflected the lamplight. The lamplighter paused in the work, looking back at the animal. They regarded each other for a long moment, and then the lamplighter crouched down slowly, carefully maintaining balance on the ice, and extended a hand. The cat considered this, then stepped forward and touched its nose to the gloved fingers. The gesture was brief, a simple acknowledgement, and then the cat stepped back and sat again. The lamplighter remained crouched there, and after a moment withdrew a small piece of bread from a pocket, left over from the midday meal. It was offered on the flat of the palm, and the cat leaned forward, sniffed it, then took it with surprising delicacy and backed away to eat it. The lamplighter stood slowly, completed the lighting of the 14th lamp, and moved on. The cat followed, keeping its distance but staying close, navigating the ice with the careful attention it required. At the 15th lamp, it sat and waited. At the 16th, it did the same. The lamplighter worked without trying to engage it further, simply allowing its presence, accepting this quiet companionship as something the evening had offered. At the 18th lamp, where the route turned towards the edge of town, the cat stopped following. The lamplighter lit the lamp, glanced back, and saw the animal sitting in the middle of the street, watching. The lamplighter raised a hand in a small gesture of farewell, unsure if such a gesture meant anything to a cat, then turned and continued on. When the lamplighter looked back again from the next corner, the cat was gone, returned to whatever shelter it had found against the cold. The final lamp stretched out into the increasing isolation of the town's edge. The cold here was even more severe, untempered by the presence of buildings and people. The lamplighter worked through them steadily, no longer thinking about the cold, simply enduring it, knowing that the work would end and warmth would come eventually. The 19th lamp, the 20th, the 21st. At the 22nd lamp, the lamplighter paused after lighting it and looked back toward town. The lights stretched away in their familiar pattern, each one clear and bright against the darkness, each one doing its small part to hold back the night. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, indifferent and eternal, and the lamplighter stood between earth and sky, between the town's modest lights and the vast illumination of the heavens, feeling neither small nor significant, but simply present, part of the evening's unfolding. The 23rd lamp stood at its boundary post, and the lamplighter gave it the usual attention, ensuring the flame was secure, that everything was properly closed against the cold. Beyond it, the fields stretched away invisible and frozen, sleeping beneath their layer of ice until spring would wake them. The lamp burned steadily, marking the edge, and the lamplighter turned away from the darkness and walked back toward town. The return journey passed in the strange clarity that came with extreme cold and clear skies. Everything seemed more defined, more present. The lamplighter moved from pool of light to pool of light, seeing them as both destination and waypoint, following them home. The ice underfoot would remain until temperatures rose. Tomorrow evening the work would require the same care, the same attention to footing. But tonight was done, the lamps were lit, and the lamplighter walked home through the frozen beauty of the transformed town, satisfied with the completion of one more evening's necessary task. The 6th evening brought a thaw. The air had softened, the temperature risen just enough to begin undoing the work of the previous days. Water dripped from eaves and icicles, a steady percussion that filled the streets with sound. The cobblestones were wet, the ice melting into rivulets that ran along the edges of the road and gathered in low places. The lamplighter stepped out into this gentler evening and felt the difference immediately, the air no longer biting, the cold present but without its former edge. The first lamp came to life easily, the mechanism freed from its frozen stiffness. The flame caught on the first match, burned steady and warm. The lamplighter stood for a moment listening to the sound of dripping water, to the quiet music of the thaw, then moved on through streets that felt somehow more alive than they had in days. The town was waking from its frozen sleep, softening, returning to something more familiar. Along the main street, puddles had formed where the ice had melted. The lamplighter walked around them, noting their location, the way they reflected what little light remained in the sky. A cart passed, its wheels splashing through the shallow water, the horse's hooves striking wet stone with a different sound than they made on dry or frozen ground. The driver touched his hat in greeting, and the lamplighter returned the gesture, then continued on to the second lamp. The work proceeded smoothly, each lamp requiring only the usual attention, no longer complicated by weather or ice or frozen mechanisms. The lamplighter moved through the routine with renewed ease, appreciating the relative simplicity after the difficulties of recent evenings. The third lamp, the fourth, the fifth, each one adding its light to streets that seemed grateful for the reprieve, for the temporary softening of winter's grip. At the fountain in the square, water ran again. The ice had broken apart, great pieces of it floating in the basin, gradually melting. The spout flowed freely, the sound of it clear and musical. The lamplighter paused there after lighting the nearby lamp, watching the water, seeing how it caught the lamplight and moved with it, a small celebration of movement, of life continuing despite the cold, despite the season's attempts to still everything into frozen silence. The bakery window showed light, and through it the lamplighter could see both the baker and his wife working together at some task, their movements coordinated and easy. The lamplighter lit the street lamp and watched them for a moment, appreciating the partnership visible in their shared work, then moved on, leaving them to their evening, to whatever needed doing before they too could rest. The route climbed through the older streets, and here the thaw had created small streams that ran down the steeper sections, water finding channels between cobblestones, flowing downhill toward the lower parts of the town. The lamplighter walked beside these temporary rivers, listening to their quiet rush, seeing how they caught and carried the lamplight along with them. Everything was in motion tonight, everything flowing and dripping and melting, the town transformed once again by the shifting weather. At the 13th lamp, the cat was waiting. It sat on a low wall above the wet street, its fur slightly damp from the moisture in the air. When the lamplighter approached, the cat stood and stretched, then jumped down from the wall with careful precision, landing on dry stone. The lamplighter lit the lamp while the cat watched, and when the work was done, reached into a pocket and withdrew another piece of bread saved from the evening meal. The cat accepted it with the same delicate care as before, eating slowly while the lamplighter stood by. When it finished, the cat looked up and began to purr, the sound sudden and loud in the quiet street. The lamplighter crouched down and extended a hand, and this time the cat stepped forward and pressed against the gloved fingers, rubbing its head along them, marking them with scent. The lamplighter stayed there, hand outstretched, while the cat moved back and forth, accepting this moment of connection. Eventually the lamplighter stood, and the cat followed as the work continued. They moved through the streets together, the cat sometimes walking alongside, sometimes ranging ahead or falling behind, but always returning, always maintaining its presence. The lamplighter worked through the route with this companion, feeling neither pleased nor displeased by it, simply accepting what the evening had brought. At the 17th lamp, a woman emerged from a nearby house carrying a bucket of scraps. She saw the lamplighter and the cat and smiled. "The cat's for the taking if you want it," she said. "Been hanging about for weeks now, won't come in but won't leave either." The lamplighter looked down at the cat, then back at the woman. "It seems content as it is," the lamplighter said. The woman shrugged. "Suit yourself," she said, and dumped the scraps into a bin and went back inside. The cat continued following, apparently unconcerned by the conversation about its fate. The lamplighter lit the 18th lamp, the 19th, the 20th, and the cat walked alongside or nearby, sometimes pausing to investigate something, always catching up again. At the 21st lamp, it sat while the lamplighter worked, then stood when the lamplighter moved on, falling into step, as if this had always been the arrangement. The final two lamps led out toward the edge of town, toward the open fields beyond. The cat followed this far, but at the 22nd lamp, it stopped and sat down, going no further. The lamplighter continued on alone to light the 23rd lamp, the last one, the boundary marker. When the work was done and the lamplighter turned back, the cat was still sitting where it had stopped, a dark shape against the wet cobblestones, waiting. They walked back together through the lit streets, through the sound of dripping water and the soft air of the thaw. At the 14th lamp, where they had first met this evening, the cat stopped. It sat down on the same low wall where the lamplighter had found it, arranged itself carefully, and looked at the lamplighter with calm, steady eyes. The lamplighter stood there for a moment, then nodded slightly, acknowledging the parting, and continued on. The walk home passed through streets transformed by water and light. The lamps reflected in puddles, doubled and rippling. The sound of the thaw continued, patient and persistent, working away at what remained of the ice. The lamplighter moved through it all, thinking about the cat, about its independence and its choice to follow or not follow, to accept company or solitude as it saw fit. There was something to learn in that, perhaps, something about the balance between connection and autonomy, between work and companionship. But the lamplighter did not push the thought, simply let it exist alongside the evening's other impressions, part of the texture of the work, part of what each evening brought. The seventh evening came with rain. Not the violent sleet of days before, but a steady, quiet rain that fell straight down, soaking everything with patient thoroughness. The lamplighter stood in the doorway for a moment before stepping out, listening to it, feeling its rhythm. This was winter rain, cold but not frozen, washing away the last remnants of ice and snow, turning the streets into dark mirrors that reflected what little light remained in the sky. The first lamp required attention to keep the rain from interfering with the flame. The lamplighter opened the small door with care, shielding it with one shoulder, and struck the match in the shelter created by the body. The flame caught and transferred to the wick, and the lamplighter closed and secured the door quickly, keeping the rain out. The light glowed through the wet glass, softened and diffused, casting a gentler illumination than usual. The rain fell with a sound like whispered conversation, filling the air with quiet noise. The lamplighter walked through it, coat darkening with moisture, hat brim dripping steadily. The streets were empty, everyone indoors, and the town felt private somehow, as if the rain had created a barrier between inside and outside, between those sheltered and those abroad. The lamplighter moved through this separate world, alone with the work and the weather. At the third lamp, the lamplighter paused to wipe rain from eyes and face, pushing back wet hair that had escaped from beneath the hat. The gloves were soaked through already, offering no real protection, and the lamplighter considered removing them entirely, but decided against it. They provided at least some barrier, however ineffective, and the work required them for handling the hot glass of the lamp doors. The fourth lamp stood near a shop with an awning, and the lamplighter took advantage of the small shelter it provided, standing beneath it for a moment after lighting the lamp. The rain drummed on the canvas above, a different sound than it made against cobblestones or rooftops. The lamplighter stood there breathing, watching the rain fall through the lamplight, seeing how each drop caught the glow briefly before continuing its fall to the ground, then back out into the weather, continuing on. The fountain overflowed, the basin unable to contain both the water from its spout and the rain that fell into it. Water spilled over the edges and ran across the square, creating a shallow flood that covered the cobblestones. The lamplighter walked through it, feeling the water seep into boots that had been merely damp before, accepting this new level of wetness as simply part of the evening's conditions. The fifth lamp was lit, then the sixth, the work continuing despite the discomfort. At the bakery, the window was bright with light, and the lamplighter could see the baker standing at the counter reading a newspaper, a cup of something steaming beside him. He looked warm and dry and content, absorbed in whatever news the paper contained. The lamplighter felt no envy, simply noted the contrast between inside and outside, between comfort and exposure, then lit the street lamp and moved on. Each person had their place, their role. The lamplighter's was here, in the rain, doing what needed doing. The climb through the older streets sent water streaming past, channels of it running down the steeper sections, gathering debris and carrying it along. The lamplighter navigated carefully, avoiding the deeper flows, staying to the higher ground where possible. The eighth lamp, the ninth, the 10th, each one lit in turn, each one requiring the same protection from the rain, the same care to ensure the flame caught and held. The cat appeared at the 11th lamp, soaked and miserable looking. It sat pressed against a doorway, trying to stay as dry as possible, which was not very dry at all. When the lamplighter approached, the cat stood and stepped out into the rain, shaking itself in a futile gesture, then walked over and pressed against the lamplighter's leg. The lamplighter looked down at the wet animal, at its bedraggled fur and sorry state, and felt something shift inside, some decision made without conscious thought. After lighting the lamplighter crouched down and gathered the cat up carefully. The animal did not resist, simply allowed itself to be lifted, tucking itself against the lamplighter's chest, seeking whatever warmth could be found there. The lamplighter opened the coat and placed the cat inside, against the dry shirt beneath, then fastened the coat around it. The cat settled there, a small weight, and began to purr. The work continued with the cat concealed inside the coat. The lamplighter moved more carefully now, aware of the additional responsibility, making sure not to jostle or disturb the animal while performing the necessary tasks. The 12th lamp was lit, then the 13th, the lamplighter working one-handed when possible, the other arm supporting the hidden cat. At the 14th lamp, a man hurried past under an umbrella, head down against the rain. He glanced at the lamplighter and called out something about terrible weather for working. The lamplighter acknowledged this with a nod, and the man continued on, his shape dissolving into the rain-filled darkness. The lamplighter lit the 14th lamp and felt the cat shift slightly inside the coat, adjusting its position, then settling again. The rain intensified as the route led towards the edge of town. It fell harder, driven now by a wind that had picked up, and the lamplighter leaned into it, protecting the cat, protecting the matches, moving steadily through the increasingly difficult conditions. The 15th lamp took several attempts, the rain blowing directly into the open door despite the lamplighter's efforts to shield it. But eventually the flame caught and held, and the work progressed. The remaining lamps became a test of endurance. The rain showed no sign of stopping, and the lamplighter was soaked completely through, water running down inside the collar, inside the sleeves, pooling in the boots. Only the cat remained dry, sheltered against the lamplighter's chest, warm and purring steadily. The lamplighter drew some comfort from this, from having kept at least one thing safe from the weather's assault. At the 22nd lamp, the lamplighter paused to rest, to gather strength for the final lamp. The rain drummed steadily on hat and shoulders, and the cat stirred inside the coat, pushing its head up beneath the lamplighter's chin. The lamplighter placed a hand over the small bulge the cat made, felt it settle again, then continued on to the 23rd lamp. The last lamp stood alone in the rain, water streaming down its post, pooling at its base. The lamplighter lit it with the final match, the flame guttering and weak but taking hold, and stood back, the work completed. The boundary was marked, the town's edge illuminated, and the lamplighter turned back toward the lit streets that led home. The walk back seemed longer tonight, each step heavy with water and exhaustion, but the cat remained tucked inside the coat, a small warmth against the cold rain, and the lamplighter walked on, moving from lamp to lamp, following the lights home. At the lamplighter's door, the cat was carefully extracted and set down on the threshold. It looked up, shook itself once, then stepped inside as if it had always belonged there. The lamplighter followed, closing the door against the rain, against the night, leaving the lamps to burn outside while inside, warmth and dryness and rest awaited them both. The 8th evening opened cold and dry, the rain having passed in the night. The lamplighter stepped out into air that felt clean and sharp, the streets washed and dark with moisture, but no longer wet. The cat followed, stepping through the doorway with confidence, as if leaving the house at this hour had always been part of its routine. The lamplighter glanced down at it, then set out on the route. The cat fell into step beside, not following exactly, but accompanying. The first lamp came to life with its usual ease, and the cat sat watching while the lamplighter worked. When the lamp was secured and the lamplighter moved on, The cat stood and walked alongside, keeping pace without apparent effort. They made their way along the main street together, the lamplighter and the cat, two shapes moving through the gathering darkness, engaged in their shared evening purpose. At the second lamp, a woman sweeping her steps paused to watch them pass. "The cat's taken to you then," she said. The lamplighter looked up from the work and nodded. "Seems so," the lamplighter replied. The woman smiled. "It's good to have company," she said, and returned to her sweeping. The lamplighter secured the lamp and continued on, the cat moving ahead now, ranging forward to investigate something, then circling back. The route proceeded through the familiar sequence, and the cat accompanied it with growing assurance. At some lamps it sat and waited. At others it explored the nearby area, disappearing into shadows and emerging again. But it never went far, never lost track of where the lamplighter was, always returning to maintain the connection. The lamplighter worked steadily, aware of the cat's presence but not distracted by it, finding a rhythm that accommodated this new element. By the sixth lamp, the sky had darkened completely, the first stars appearing in the gaps between lingering clouds. The temperature had dropped with the clearing, and the lamplighter felt the cold settling in, the dampness from the previous evening's rain now frozen in the air. The cat seemed unbothered, its fur fluffed against the chill, its movements sure and steady. It paused at the fountain to lap water from the basin, then continued on when the lamplighter passed. The bakery window showed the baker's wife again, and she noticed the lamplighter and the cat passing. She came to the door and opened it, leaning out. "That's a fine companion you've found," she called. The lamplighter paused in lighting the street lamp. "It found me, I think," the lamplighter said. The woman laughed. "That's how the best ones work," she said, and went back inside, closing the door against the cold. The cat led the way up through the climbing streets, moving with the confidence of an animal that knew its territory. It paused at corners, looked back to ensure the lamplighter was following, then continued on. At the 11th lamp, it stopped to groom itself, sitting in the pool of light from the previous lamp, licking its paw and washing its face with careful attention. The lamplighter worked nearby, and when the new lamp was lit, the cat stood and shook itself, and they moved on together. The older part of town felt less lonely with the cat present. The narrow streets, the tall buildings leaning close, the deep shadows between them, all seemed less isolating with this small companion walking alongside. The lamplighter noticed this without analysing it, simply experiencing the difference, the way shared presence changed the quality of solitude without eliminating it entirely. At the 14th lamp, the cat climbed onto the low wall where the lamplighter had first fed it. It sat there at eye level, watching the work with calm attention, and when the lamp was secured, it reached out one paw and touched the lamplighter's shoulder briefly, a gesture that seemed almost deliberate. The lamplighter stood still for a moment, acknowledging this contact, then continued on. The cat jumped down and followed. The remaining lamp stretched toward the edge of town, and the cat walked beside the lamplighter through all of them, its presence steady and reliable. At the 17th lamp, a dog barked from behind a fence, and the cat paused, ears forward, assessing the threat. But the dog was contained, and the cat dismissed it and moved on. At the 19th lamp, another cat appeared briefly, a larger animal that watched from across the street. The lamplighter's companion hissed once, establishing territory, and the other cat melted back into the shadows. The 21st lamp stood where the buildings began to thin, where the transition from town to country became apparent. The cat stopped here and sat, looking out toward the darkness beyond, its tail wrapped around its feet, The lamplighter lit the lamp and stood beside the cat, both of them looking out at the invisible fields. The cold pressed in from that direction, unimpeded by buildings, and after a moment the cat stood and they continued on together. At the 20-second lamp, the cat suddenly left the route, darting off into a narrow space between buildings. The lamplighter lit the lamp and waited, and after a few moments the cat emerged, carrying something small in its mouth. A mouse, already dead. The cat set it down carefully, looked up at the lamplighter as if seeking approval, then picked it up again and carried it a short distance away to eat. The lamplighter watched this display of hunting prowess, then moved on to the final lamp, knowing the cat would catch up. The 23rd lamp stood at its boundary post, and the lamplighter lit it in solitude, the cat still occupied with its meal. The light spilled out across the threshold between town and countryside, and the lamplighter stood there thinking about boundaries, about the edges of things, about what marked the transition from one state to another. The work itself was a kind of boundary, separating day from night, marking the transition from one to the other with these small flames that would burn until morning restored the natural light and made them unnecessary again. The cat appeared, licking its whiskers, satisfied with its hunt. It sat beside the lamplighter, and they stood together looking out at the darkness, two small lives at the edge of the lit world. Then the lamplighter turned back toward town, and the cat followed, and they walked home together through the streets the lamplighter had just transformed. The return journey passed in comfortable silence. The cat walked sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, sometimes directly alongside. At the lamplighter's door, it did not hesitate but walked straight in when the door opened, claimed a place near the stove, and began to groom itself with thorough attention. The lamplighter hung up hat and coat, removed wet boots, and moved about the small space preparing for rest. The cat watched these preparations, then curled into a tight ball and closed its eyes. The lamplighter looked at it, at this creature that had chosen to join the work and the home, and felt something like contentment, something like satisfaction at this small companionship that asked for little and offered much. The 9th evening brought fog. It had rolled in during the afternoon, thick and grey, settling over the town like a blanket, muffling sound and obscuring distance. The lamplighter stepped out with the cat beside, and they both paused at the threshold, looking into the transformed world. Visibility extended perhaps 20 paces, no more. Beyond that, everything dissolved into whiteness. Buildings and streets and sky, all lost in the fog's embrace. The first lamp took on new importance in these conditions. When lit, its light barely penetrated the fog, creating a diffuse glow that extended only a short distance before being absorbed completely. The lamplighter stood back and looked at it, at how different it appeared, how the fog changed the quality of the illumination itself. The cat sat nearby, watching, its dark shape clear against the pale fog, a point of solid reality in the uncertain landscape. They moved forward into the whiteness, the lamplighter and the cat, following a route the lamplighter knew by memory, by the count of steps and the feel of the cobblestones underfoot. The fog pressed close, damp and cold, clinging to clothing and fur, beading on every surface. Sound travelled strangely in it, some noises amplified and others swallowed completely. The lamplighter's footsteps echoed oddly, seeming to come from multiple directions at once. At the second lamp, a figure emerged from the fog ahead, startling both the lamplighter and the cat. It was the doctor, carrying his bag, walking carefully, one hand extended before him. He stopped when he saw the lamplighter. "Thank goodness," he said. "I've gotten myself turned around somehow." Where is the church from here? The lamplighter pointed in the correct direction, back the way they had come, then along the street that branched to the left. The doctor thanked them and disappeared back into the fog, his shape fading within a few steps, becoming a shadow and then nothing at all. The third lamp appeared suddenly, materializing from the fog only when the lamplighter was nearly upon it. The cat had found it first, sitting at its base, waiting. The lamplighter lit it and watched how the light tried to push back against the fog, how it created a small sphere of visibility, an island of relative clarity in the surrounding greyness. Then on to the next, navigating by memory and instinct, trusting in the knowledge of countless previous evenings to guide the way. The fog made the familiar strange. Buildings appeared as vague shapes, their details lost. Streets seemed wider or narrower than they actually were. The fountain in the square was invisible until the lamplighter nearly walked into it, the sound of its water muffled and directionless. The cat stayed close tonight, not ranging ahead or exploring, seeming to sense that this evening required different behaviour, greater caution. At the bakery, the window's light showed as a faint yellow rectangle in the fog. The lamplighter could barely see inside, could make out only the suggestion of movement, someone there but details impossible to discern. The street lamp was lit, adding its glow to the scene, and the lamplighter moved on, the cat following closely, both of them disappearing into the fog as completely as if they had never been there at all. The climb through the older streets was slower tonight. The lamplighter counted steps between corners, used the sound of footfalls to judge when the street changed gradient or surface. The cat walked directly beside now, occasionally brushing against the lamplighter's leg, maintaining contact. At the 9th lamp, they paused, and the lamplighter looked back toward where the route had come from. Nothing was visible, only fog and the faint glow of the most recent lamps bleeding through it, creating soft patches of lighter grey in the surrounding whiteness. A cart came out of the fog suddenly, the horse looming large and ghostly before resolving into solid reality. The driver pulled up, clearly uncertain of his way. The lamplighter gave him directions, and he touched his hat in thanks and urged the horse forward again, the cart disappearing within moments, the sound of wheels and hooves fading slowly, taking longer to vanish than the sight of them had. The 11th lamp marked where the woman had spoken about the cat days before. The lamplighter lit it and looked for her house, but the fog obscured everything beyond the immediate circle of light. The cat sat on the damp cobblestones, apparently content despite the moisture seeping into its fur. The lamplighter crouched down and ran a hand along its back, feeling the dampness, the slight chill. The cat pressed into the touch, purring, then stood when the lamplighter stood, ready to continue. At the 14th lamp, another shape appeared in the fog, but this time it was another cat, the larger one that had been seen before. The lamplighter's companion moved forward, tail high, and the two cats touched noses briefly, some communication passing between them that required no sound. Then the visitor turned and walked away, vanishing into the fog as completely as if it had never existed. The lamplighter's cat watched it go, then returned and sat waiting for the work to continue. The remaining lamps emerged from the fog one by one, each appearance almost surprising despite the lamplighter's knowledge of where they should be. The fog created a sense of discovery, of finding rather than simply reaching. Each lamp was lit with the same care, each flame a small victory over the obscuring greyness. The 17th, the 18th, the 19th, the cat stayed close through all of them, never straying, its presence constant and reassuring. At the 20th lamp, the lamplighter stopped and listened. From somewhere in the fog came the sound of voices, people talking, their words indistinct but their tones clear. They seemed close, but the fog made distance impossible to judge. The lamplighter called out, asking if anyone needed help. The voices stopped. A pause. Then a man's voice came back, thanking them but saying they had found their way. The voices resumed and faded, moving away, and the lamplighter continued on with the cat. The 21st lamp stood at the edge of what the fog allowed to be seen. Beyond it, even the vague shapes of buildings were lost. The lamplighter lit it and stood looking into the whiteness, into the complete absence of visible world. The cat sat beside, both of them at the edge of the known, and after a moment they continued on together, moving into that whiteness with only memory and faith to guide them. The 22nd lamp materialized exactly where it should have been, and the lamplighter felt a small satisfaction at this confirmation of internal mapping, of the body's knowledge of space and distance. The cat seemed untroubled by the fog, walking with the same confidence it showed on clear nights, trusting perhaps in the lamplighter's certainty, or simply accepting the conditions without question. The 23rd lamp stood alone at the boundary, and the lamplighter lit it and then stood beside it, looking out into the fog that concealed the fields. The world seemed to end here tonight, the fog creating an absolute barrier. There was something peaceful in it, in this limitation of vision, in being contained within a small sphere of the known. The lamplighter stood there with the cat, both of them breathing the damp air, both of them part of the fog's strange quietness. The walk back was an exercise in trust, in believing that the route existed even when invisible, that the town continued beyond what could be seen. The lamps emerged from the fog in their proper sequence, each one a confirmation, each one leading to the next. The cat walked steadily beside, and the lamplighter followed the path home, moving through the transformed familiar landscape with calm acceptance, knowing that morning would bring clarity again, would dissolve the fog and restore the visible world, but appreciating this temporary mystery, this evening of navigating by faith rather than sight. The 10th evening arrived clear and still, the fog having lifted during the day to reveal a sky washed clean and pale. The cold had settled in with a different quality now, not harsh but simply present, the kind of cold that spoke of winter's full establishment. The lamplighter stepped out with the cat, both of them pausing as they had come to do, taking in the evening's particular character before beginning the work. The first lamp was lit with the ease of long practice, and the lamplighter stood back watching the flames settle, feeling the familiar satisfaction of the work beginning. The cat sat nearby, grooming its paw, unhurried. They had fallen into a rhythm over these past evenings, the lamplighter and the cat, a partnership that required no discussion, no negotiation. They simply moved through the work together, each knowing their part. Along the main street, a few people were still about, finishing their own day's tasks. The lamplighter exchanged nods with those who passed, brief acknowledgements between people who shared the town's evening spaces. The second lamp was lit, then the third, and the route proceeded with its customary steadiness. The cat sometimes walked ahead, sometimes behind, its presence now so familiar that the lamplighter could sense it even without looking, could feel where it was by some awareness that had developed over the days. At the fourth lamp, near the fountain, the baker came out of his shop carrying a small package wrapped in paper. He saw the lamplighter and approached, holding it out. "My wife wanted you to have this," he said. "Some bread from yesterday, still good, and perhaps something for your companion as well." The lamplighter accepted it with thanks, tucking it carefully into a pocket. The baker nodded toward the cat. "It's good you took it in," he said. It needed someone, and it seems you needed it too, though you might not have known it. The lamplighter considered this, then nodded. Perhaps so, the lamplighter said. The baker smiled and returned to his shop. The work continued through the familiar streets, each lamp adding its light to the growing darkness. The sky deepened through its evening progression, blue to violet to indigo, and the stars began to appear. The lamplighter moved through this transition, both observing it and participating in it, the work itself a form of conversation with the changing light. The cat walked beside, occasionally stopping to investigate something, always returning. At the 9th lamp, outside the bakery, the window showed both the baker and his wife, tidying after the day's work. They saw the lamplighter and waved, and the lamplighter raised a hand in return. Through the glass, the lamplighter could see them turn back to each other, saying something, and then the baker's wife laughed, her face bright with it. The lamplighter lit the street lamp and moved on, carrying the image of that moment, that small glimpse of shared happiness. The climb through the older streets felt less steep tonight, or perhaps the lamplighter had simply grown stronger over these evenings of walking. The 11th lamp, the 12th, the 13th, each one lit in turn, each one taking its place in the growing constellation of lights that marked the inhabited world. The cat climbed the stone steps beside the 14th lamp, sat on the wall, and watched the work with what seemed like approval, though the lamplighter knew better than to assign such human qualities to an animal's gaze. At the 16th lamp, the lamplighter paused to look back over the town. The lights stretched away in their pattern, some visible directly, others merely suggested by their glow against buildings. It was a view the lamplighter had seen countless times, but tonight it seemed particularly clear, particularly complete. The work made visible, the pattern revealed. The lamplighter stood there for a long moment, the cat sitting beside, both of them looking at what the evening had brought into being. The newspaper had been waiting at the 17th lamp, weighted down by a stone. The lamplighter picked it up after lighting the lamp, unfolded it to see what had been marked. An article about electric street lighting being installed in London, the heading read. The lamplighter read it slowly, standing in the glow of the gas lamp, learning about this new technology, this different way of bringing light to streets. The article spoke of brightness and efficiency, of progress and modernity. The lamplighter folded the paper again, tucked it away, and continued on. Change came, always had, always would. The work would be different someday, perhaps, or perhaps someone else would do it in a different way. But tonight there were still lamps to light, still the familiar route to complete. The remaining lamps led out toward the edge of town. The cat stayed close, both of them moving through the clear, cold evening. At the 21st lamp, a thin line of smoke rose from a distant chimney, perfectly straight in the still air, and the lamplighter watched it climb toward the darkening sky, a temporary mark on the permanent canvas of evening. The cat rubbed against the lamplighter's leg, and they moved on together. The 22nd lamp stood where the buildings thinned, and here the lamplighter paused to breathe in the cold air, feeling it fill the lungs, feeling alive and present and part of the evening's unfolding. The work was nearly done. One lamp remained. The cat sat waiting, patient as always, and after a moment they continued on together. The 23rd lamp stood at the boundary, and the lamplighter lit it for what must have been the 100th time, the 1000th time, numbers that had long since ceased to matter. What mattered was the flame, the light, the work itself. The lamplighter secured it and stood back, and the cat sat beside, and together they looked out at the dark fields at the invisible countryside beyond the reach of light. The walk back was quiet and peaceful. The town settled around them, windows glowing, doors closed against the cold, people safe inside their homes. The lamplighter moved through the lit streets with the cat, both of them heading toward warmth and rest. At each lamp they passed, the lamplighter noted its steady burning, its faithfulness to the task of holding back the darkness. Small lights, modest flames, but doing their work as they were meant to do. At the lamplighter's door, the cat went inside first, as it had learned to do, and the lamplighter followed, closing the door behind them both. The evening's work was done. The lamps would burn through the night, and tomorrow evening they would need lighting again, and the lamplighter would be there to do it, with the cat beside. The pattern would continue, the routine would repeat, and there was comfort in that, satisfaction in the steady rhythm of necessary work, in knowing one's place and purpose, in moving through the world with quiet competence and modest contribution. The lamplighter removed coat and hat, tended to the evening's small necessities, and finally sat in the chair by the stove. The cat jumped up and settled in the lamplighter's lap, purring with contentment. Outside, the lamps burned steadily. Inside, warmth and rest. The lamplighter closed eyes and let the day's work settle, feeling only peace, only the simple rightness of having done what needed doing, of having been present for another turning of the world from light to darkness and back again. Tomorrow would come, and with it another evening, another walk, another lighting of lamps. But tonight was complete, and that was enough.